Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, and joining us to preview the Texans and Bears is Corey Wootton, who's not only the co-host of the Bleav in Bears podcast, but many of you will remember him as a defensive end for the Bears from 2010 to 2013. And Corey, 3 of your 4 years, your coach was Lovie Smith, right?
Yep, Lovie Smith. I mean, that was some of my best years in the league. One of my favorite coaches I ever played for. Houston has a good one in him, so hopefully they can get things rolling with him because he's a real player's coach and people really love him.
Tell me what it was like to play for Lovie. I mean, what kind of a guy is he? What was it like to be around him on a daily basis and just, X's and O's and everything, a little bit of everything?
It was great being around him as a person. I mean, one of the nicest guys in the world, really soft-spoken. I know a lot of people in Chicago that rubbed him the wrong way, when we would lose sometimes, his kind of even keel personality. But one of the most intelligent defensive minds in the NFL, in my opinion. X's and O's. We had such a great defensive staff as well. Rob Marinelli was the coordinator. Him and Lovie were working together on our defense. It was just incredible just to see the adjustments he would make from game to game, even at halftime together, and just everybody loved him. When he got fired in 2012, we had that end of the year meeting, and you saw grown men in that meeting room crying. The fact that he was gone there. So that's just how much of an impact he had on our teammates.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what the feel was, because in your rookie season, you guys go to the NFC Championship game, if I remember correctly. And then Lovie's last season in Chicago, even though the Bears didn't make the playoffs, you're 10-6. So in your 3 seasons, you were 11-5, 8-8, 10-6. And of course, before that, he had gone to the Super Bowl a few years earlier. So, it could have totally thrown you guys for a loop, I would assume, when Lovie is not coming back.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I think it had to do with the new GM being there, Phil Emery. Usually a GM wants to have his pick of head coach and whatnot. But the thing is, our defense was one of the best in the league. And then you go from the next year when Mark Trestman was the coach, we had the same defensive staff. Same defensive personnel with the exception of Brian Urlacher. And we went from top 5 defense to dead last in every category. So I think that just shows the kind of impact that Lovie Smith and company had on our team.
He's not really a big blitzer as far as we know here in Houston, but when he was with the Bears, you guys had so much talent in the front 7 with guys like Julius Peppers and Urlacher and Lance Briggs. The Texans, they don't have that kind of talent. Right now, Texans have the 2nd worst defense in yards per game, even though they're the 11th best scoring defense. So they're not giving up the points. Do you feel like this is something that he should change as far as his blitz philosophy based on that talent?
Well, I think if you look at Lovie's traditional defense, it's kind of like that bend but don't break philosophy, right? You allow a lot of yards, but when it comes down into the red zone, you really buck up, and then you hold them to field goals a lot of times. I think he doesn't have the same personnel. You look at guys like Jerry Hughes; he's had a pretty good start thus far, but he's towards the tail end of his career. So they don't have the same guys. Like when I was there, we had Julius Peppers, Henry Melton, that was a Pro Bowler, Lance Briggs, Brian Urlacher. He doesn't have that personnel. But hopefully he can get that in the future, with draft and free agency. But I think they've done a pretty good job thus far of generating some pressure. But that Tampa 2 is based off pressure from the front 4. I would like to see him maybe bring some blitzes here and there, maybe a linebacker one-on-one on a running back, to try to create that mismatch. So I guess we'll see. But that's typically not Lovie Smith type of football.
Is there anything that you just being around him and you go, well, he could have done this better or that better? Did you feel like there were any weaknesses in him as a coach when you were playing for him?
No, I think that the biggest thing was we just couldn't get the offense going. It seems like for whatever reason in Chicago, the offensive coordinator position, it could never get things going. When we were there, if the offense could match the defense, 2010, we were really good. 2012, we were really good as well. We started 7-1, but just the offense could never carry. Because, from time to time, the defense is going to have a bad game, but, the offense could never step up when we needed them. Nothing could work on all cylinders together.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the offense here right now, but just a reminder to subscribe and comment and like us on YouTube for all our viewers and listeners out there, it's your best way to support the show. And Corey, both franchises with second-year quarterbacks, Davis Mills looks to have regressed somewhat after just 2 games. What are you seeing on your end from Justin Fields so far?
It's been tough to really evaluate him. The first game was kind of a monsoon. He made some really good plays in the second half by using his feet in that 49ers game. And then last week against Green Bay, I don't know if you guys got a chance to see that whole game, but the first drive, they come down and, 9 plays, drive all the way down the field, score. They're in 21 personnel with the fullback, 2 tight ends, and they're doing really well. The second drive, they come back to a gun run, and then 4 straight 3-and-outs after that. So I kind of didn't understand it. And then, in that game, he threw the ball 11 times. So it's kind of really hard to gauge where he is when he's only thrown 28 passes in 2 games. So this is a huge game, I think, for both these young quarterbacks, Mills and Justin Fields, to really see kind of where they're at, right? Both of these teams are kind of at a critical point in the season where, you guys could easily be 2-0 right now. And, we could be 0-2 at this point. So it's a critical juncture right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing what these 2 quarterbacks bring to the table.
The Bears averaging 14 pass attempts in 2 games. The Texans have given up the 3rd most rushing yards in the league. Any reason why the Bears should pass the ball this week, looking at those 2 stats?
No, I think, they should have the same kind of philosophy they did with the Green Bay game. That was working. David Montgomery went for 122 yards, I Bleav. Everything was really working with the run game. So I think that should be the identity of this team, because even the limited pass attempts that Justin Fields has had, it's worked off the running game, right? Some hard play actions. And when you talk about the weaknesses of the Bears team, right, they don't have that many playmakers at receiver. Their O-line is kind of suspect at times. So how do you make things easier, right? You really run the ball and then you work off the play action. It helps those tackles a lot. So I think they need to focus on that.
What are the strengths and the weaknesses of this Bears defense? Not that I Bleav the Texans would know how to exploit the strengths and weaknesses, but what are you seeing from the Bears so far on defense?
They can't stop the run. I mean, they're averaging giving up 6 yards a pop. So if I'm the Texans, I'm giving it to Pierce all game. I'm taking the pressure off Mills, because the Bears defense hasn't been able to stop the run. And so if I'm them, I'm from the get-go. First play of the game, smash mouth football, try to have that as the identity. And then if they could stop it, game plan off that. But thus far, the Bears defense can't stop the run.
Yeah, speaking of running players and good rushers and Bears that are legends, I'm wearing my Gale Sayers shirt.
Yeah,
I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, I like that.
What are the keys for the Bears? Anything that sticks out to you? Any predictions that you've got as you're looking at this game?
Yeah, I'm looking at this game as for the Bears. I think it's a must-win game. Especially after last week. Not really doing what we kind of thought they would offensively. In that second game, we kind of took the first game with a grain of salt, saying, hey, Justin Fields made some plays, but it was a monsoon. And they come out with Green Bay with a great game plan, and then all of a sudden go off that. So this is an important game for offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, right? To see how he is as a game caller, right? This was kind of a gamble for the Bears. He was a quarterback coach, passing game coordinator, but you know what it is. Aaron Rodgers and LaFleur they're calling all those plays. So this was a big hire for the Bears as kind of a gamble to see where he's at. And thus far in the first 2 games, I don't think he's lived up to the hype about him. So this is an important game, against arguably a pretty good team, in my opinion. I think the Texans struggle in some areas, but I thought, their effort throughout the whole game in both of these first contests has been great. So it's going to be important to see, kind of where the Bears are after this 3rd game, because I think it's going to tell you, about Justin Fields' progress and then where this offense as a whole is going to go.
I'm going to flip the table on you and let you ask a question to me if you'd like. And what are you most interested in about the Texans from your angle? Anything you'd like to ask me from the Bears perspective?
Yeah, so looking at the statistics thus far, it seems like, from watching on film, Pierce kind of jumps out to me. He's a talented guy, but it seems like they really haven't made an effort to get him the ball. So you think they're it's just been a little game planning scheme wise, or they're just trying to pass the ball a little bit more?
Well, the first week, it was really a real debate, not even a debate. It was a lot of angry fans that, just didn't understand why they weren't giving him the ball. And it's not as though this team's going to the Super Bowl and they were protecting everything like, oh, we're worried about going to the Super Bowl. We need to get this guy going and see what he's got. And then Lovie Smith comes out the next day and says, look, we need to get the ball to Damien Pierce more. And he did not seem happy that they didn't give him the ball more. And, Pep Hamilton is the OC, and there's a lot of pressure already from the fans that are not happy with what they've seen from Pep Hamilton so far. Now, Davis Mills, he's a big issue as well, and he hasn't looked good. And like I said, the thought here is he's regressed from what we saw last year, but they've got to get the ball to Pierce more. Now, they ran the ball with him 13 times this past week, and they didn't give the ball to Rex. So that's a good thing. But, I just feel like they're passing the ball too much. They need to run the ball. That's the strength of this team, especially right now until Davis Mills gets his feet under him and starts getting into a rhythm and figuring things out, if that happens. But you need to get the ball to Damien Pierce. I mean, the one thing that you may think that they're worried about is, well, we don't want to give the ball to him 25 or 30 times a game. We don't want to take the tread off the tire when this team is still maybe a couple of years away from being a playoff team, or at least a contender for the Super Bowl. In this division, I guess you are a playoff team if you've got a pulse, but it still seems like it's a couple of years away before you've got to really feel like this group is going to come together. I mean, they're playing a bunch, Corey, of first and second year players as starters, and a lot of guys first and second year are getting a lot of time in the lineup, even if they're not starting. So it's been a real perplexing thing as to why Pierce hasn't ran the ball more.
Yeah, it seems like both of these teams are kind of in a similar point, right? Defensively, both teams have failed to stop the run in the first 2 weeks. Both have young quarterbacks. It seems like the strength of the team is the running backs. But yet again, both teams are like, why are we not giving the running back the ball enough, right? That's what seems like kind of the pulse of both teams thus far. And sometimes I don't understand it. Like I was talking about this on one of the shows I do, the post game. Coordinators a lot of time in this league get too cute at times. They're like, okay, we need to show this and that and the other. The thing is, right, it is so hard to defend a good running attack. Like as a former player, right, especially what the Bears were doing against Green Bay in that first drive, 21 personnel, 2 tight ends, a fullback. It is so hard to defend that, especially when they're getting 8 yards a pop. You're so tired as a defense, you can't get in any rhythm. And then all of a sudden they run the play action, and then it's hard to come home. So it amazes me how much they get away from that, when stuff's working. And it seems like both teams, the strength is the running game, but yet again, every game they're like, well, I wish we would have run the ball more. It kind of is backwards in this league a lot of times. And offensive coordinators left and right, they get too cute and they try to, oh, we can pass. No, do what's working, and then everything will work off that, right? When you can run the football, it makes the defense softer. Then when you run play action, their eyes are in the backfield, then you can take shots deep. That's how football works, and then when Mills and Justin Fields get comfortable, then you can open up that passing package.
What do you think is a couple of misconceptions as a player that fans might have from a coaching perspective, or just, watching the games? Are there things that you feel like fans consistently miss?
Yeah, all the time. I think they think a quarterback just can't play, right? I've always said this. I think there's some guys that can play with any coordinator, right? i.e. Aaron Rodgers, right? Now Tom Brady had hit the point in his career, right? But you got to look early on, a guy like Josh Allen, right? His first year, people, kind of weren't sold on him, right? And Brian Daboll comes in and really molds him into this great player. And now he's arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now, right? You look at a guy like Patrick Mahomes, right? Who was sitting behind Alex Smith, right? And then even Alex Smith himself, right? He comes from San Francisco and comes to the Chiefs. And everyone's like, oh, he's a game manager, he can't do this. And then the impact of Andy Reid, right? He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, All-Pro, leading the league in yardage, completion percentage, all this, right? Because of Andy Reid. Then Patrick Mahomes comes in. Andy Reid's play calling. He's able to really flourish. So I think people really sleep on the importance with a young quarterback, or any quarterback to that matter, is the coordinator, how important they are to molding, especially a young quarterback. And both of these young quarterbacks, it's important that these coordinators script for success, right? You get them the confidence. Once you can get them the confidence, that's when you can open up things. And that's when you have a guy perform how he's supposed to be able to.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And I know there's a lot more that we as fans miss in all of this, but really fun. I can't wait for Sunday, the podcast, Bleav in Bears. He's at Corey Wootton on Twitter, and looking forward to Sunday, and just looking forward to what the Texans and the Bears are going to do the rest of the season, and if there is some progress from both of these teams in a certain direction. But it's great to have you on the show, Corey, and thanks for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube and commenting on the videos. Listen to Houston Sports Talk on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google. Don't forget to tell a friend and share our show on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.